I'm Mike. Welcome back to the shop. Well, I've received the replacement parts in the mail today, so we're ready to begin our rebuild of the single rail gearbox. Okay, so this is the main shaft assembly, all in pieces at this point. All of the gears have been laid out in the general order of assembly. I've got my assembly diagram to help, and also I've got a another reference book on making sure that I orient everything correctly. So I will be checking that documentation as I'm going through this. All of the parts have been cleaned in gasoline to remove any contaminants and any residual oil. I will be using some assembly lube to put the parts back together so that they rotate nice and smoothly. So I'm going to orient the camera and we'll start putting this together. Oh, also notice I put some clean cloths. They're stained, but they're clean, so I won't contaminate the components as I'm putting them together. Okay, so we start with the first gear, and this goes on from the tail end of the shaft. So we'll install it from the threaded side. I'm going to put a little bit of assembly lube on the balk ring surface here. Put the balk ring in place, just spin it around a little bit, and I'm also going to put a little bit of assembly lube on the inside of the gear. Put the balk ring back on. Alright, and then slide it onto the shaft. And that will go all the way down to a shoulder in the shaft. Okay, there is also a thrust washer that will go on this end. There's two sides to the thrust washer. There's a wear pattern on both sides. If you can see the real thin silver, that actually will butt up against the inside of the bearing. So that sits here like this, and the wider wear path sits on the back end of the first gear. So we'll hold that off to the side. We'll put that in as we're assembling the overall gear train into the gearbox itself. Okay, next we're going to install the balk ring and Synchro and reverse gear, the one that we did a little bit of the grinding on to dress it up. Okay, I've got I don't have the ball bearings and the springs in this, so I'm going to install that and press it together and put it in. Now there is an orientation to this. If you can see it, I'll hold it like this. There's a shoulder on one side and a smaller shoulder on the other side. So actually the large shoulder goes towards the front of the gear train. If you don't do that, then you end up having these balls exposed, the ball bearings exposed when the Synchro gear is going across it. So it's got to be oriented this way, and we'll put that assembly together. Also, there's an orientation to the reverse gear. There is a snout on this part of the gear. This snout covers the balk ring that goes in the back. Finally, there's also a split ring that needs to go between the first gear and reverse gear, and that split ring will hold the gear train together in the back end. So Let's first assemble the reverse gear Synchro. I've got the new springs and some three new balls. And basically all you need to do, I'm going to take the balk ring off, is you put a spring in each hole and a ball in each hole. Do the same, go all the way around. And you got to be able to hold them in place because they will fall out and they'll go all over your garage floor, which is just a wonderful thing to try to find. All right, so spring in and there. Now, got to orient it so that the larger snout is in the front, facing the opposite direction to the shoulder in the rear. So the shoulder on the reverse gear I'm going to put down, and the bigger shoulder on the Synchro gear I'm going to put in the back, and I'm going to make sure I'm holding these balls in place while I lower it in. Okay, all the balls are in place, just snap it down. Okay, I'm improvising a little bit using a pipe clamp. Basically, I'm not strong enough, I don't know how many people are, to hold all three balls in at the same time. So what I'm going to do is compress the balls using this pipe clamp into the gear, and then I'm going to press the gear into the casing. Okay, so that partially worked. What I ended up doing is not pretty, but I used a wooden hammer, a wooden handle, and was able to get enough compression on this where the balls would go in, and then basically just pounded it in place. So didn't do the hammer a lot of favors, but it didn't hurt the gears at all. So we're okay with that. All right. So next step, we take that reverse gear and we put the reverse gear in place. Before we do that, we tighten that up. There is a shaft. There's a groove here that the split rings fit into. So you just put the split ring here, and then this slides in place, and that holds it together. That holds that from going any further. So the split ring is holds in there. Now the split ring is kind of funny to get in. I'm going to orient this in a vertical direction when I'm putting this together, and put the split ring here on both sides. without dropping it on the floor. And then I'm taking the reverse gear snout down, placing it on, bringing first gear up, and then just sliding this in place once I get it oriented properly. Okay, that's together. I don't know, I don't have it oriented properly yet. I gotta spin the balk ring until it lines up. There it goes. So now the balk ring is in place, the split rings are in place. We've got first gear, reverse gear, first balk, and the first gear balk ring in place. Okay, so now I'm going to set this back on the bench, and we'll look at putting the next gear in, which is the I don't have this memorized yet, so I'm looking at my procedure. This would be second gear. So second gear goes in, and the balk ring. So this has got a thrust washer which goes on here. And it's oriented this way. I've got to put the bushing on inside of the of second gear. Before I do that, I'm going to lube it. Okay. And I'm going to put a little bit of lube on the balk ring as well. And then I'm going to install it. The balk ring oriented in, teeth in, and then the bushing and second gear in place. Okay, good. So now we've got the reverse gear, which has the synchros on both sides. When we want to have first gear, it goes this direction. When we want second gear, it comes in this direction, like that. Okay, I got the orientation right on this now. We've got a bushing that goes in first, and then we've got the gear, which is third gear. So bushing, third gear, then I've got another thrust washer, and this has a special orientation as well. It's got a flat side on this side, and then it's got a dished side. And then we've got a clip that will hold that whole assembly together. So I'm gonna put some lube on the shaft, put the bushing in, get it all lubed up there. Then put some more lube on the shaft, or on the outside of the bushing. Put the gear in, rotate that around, and then take the thrust washer and put the flat side on the inside. So I will again put a little bit of lube on this and then orient it and put it inside. Okay, now there is a groove that the split washer goes into. This is the old split washer. I bought a new one because this one got damaged as I took it apart. So you get an idea of what it looks like. This goes over, slides into the groove, and holds that gear train assembly together. So also in the British terms, it's called a circlip or a circular clip. So there's the new one. There's the old one. You can see that there's a little bit of a difference in that. So I'll just slide it over. Okay, putting this clip on was very tedious, not very easy to do. It's a very tight fit, and I'm probably using the wrong tool, but what I ended up doing was using a pair of C-clip pliers and getting the two open ends onto one side, and then just kept on using the tool to work its way back. So now at this point I've got the ring clip or the split ring clip here in place, and all I need to do now is push it into the groove without pulling the gear train off. Okay, so the clip is in place. It's centered in the groove. Everything is where it should be. Okay, the third and fourth Synchro sleeve, you'll notice that there is an orientation on this one as well. You'll see the groove on this sleeve. That goes towards the front of the gear train, and then the inner sleeve, you'll see that there is a snout on one end and flat on the other. The snout aligns with the groove, so it goes together like this. All right, so now we'll also put the new balls and springs in. Okay, and then I'm going to add the assembly lube. Make sure the balls are in place. Oh, that one slid together a lot easier, so I didn't need to worry about the pipe clamp. Okay, now, so to install this, we've got a Bach disc or Bach gear in the front. We'll again put a little bit of assembly lube on that, slide that on, spin that around, put a little bit of assembly lube on the inside, race here, and make sure that the groove is forward, slide it in place. Line it up to the balk ring. Okay, that's the front half of the gear train. The next half of the gear train will be basically putting in the input shaft and assembling that. But before we do that, we've got to install this main gear train into the gearbox. The next step in doing this is actually to put some wire around the gear train to hold it together so that it doesn't come apart while you're installing it into the gearbox. So I've got some wire that I'm going to wrap around the gear train, and I've fashioned that out of just some household wiring So I'll show you what it looks like when it's all put together. Okay, so now I've taken some of this copper wire. This is actually that ground wire in a household wiring, and basically just wrapped it around here so that the gears don't come out. This will be then installed inside the gearbox, but before we do that, we're going to have to put the lay shaft into the gearbox, and I've got to take all the old needle bearings out and replace them, and then put a temporary shaft in place to hold them in, and just put it at the bottom of the gearbox. So I'm going to take care of this next, and then we will install the gear train.